All right, all right, all right. We are back with another episode of the Give and Go Show. As always, my name is Griffin. I'm joined by my boy Matt Ferentinos, MJ Tinos. How we doing today? How we living?
What up?
Hell yeah,
Doing
good to
great,
have you
man. Doing
back.
great. Excited to talk some basketball.
Yeah, good to be back. Good to be back. I can't, I'm proud of us. Honestly, like this is going live twice in 2 weeks for people that are not super good for at keeping their schedules on lock and keeping their shit together. Man, we're 2 for 2.
I know doing some homework on like NBA teams and things too. I can't believe I'm like actually doing that instead of just playing Nickelodeon All Star Brawl like all day, every day.
Yeah, exactly. Pushing 30, super
I am a
super close
child,
to
so
30, and we're out here. We're doing homework and then we're getting ready and we're setting up stream views and shit like that. And we got our social media, we got our Twitter, we got our Instagram, we got our YouTube page set up. If you're watching the stream live right now, you can go follow us on YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube. You just search for the Give and Go Show. You can also follow us wherever you're watching us on Twitter and Instagram. On both Twitter and Instagram, it's at Give Go Show. So you can get at us there. Sorry that we can't have the Give and Go Show or Give and Go Show as our usernames, but those names are already taken because we're not as creative as we think we are.
copyright infringements.
Yeah, I went to
What a
the I
pain.
think it was the Twitter. I went to Give and Go Show Twitter, and I think somebody made a Twitter for a sports talk show in 2013, and I think they tweeted like twice, and they haven't tweeted since then. And so I want to be like, yo, do I know anybody at Twitter so I can like get this handle? But I don't
Yeah,
think
like
I
can I give
know
you like
anybody at
20
Twitter.
bucks for your handle? I mean,
Yeah,
people have bought
exactly.
Twitter handles and stuff
Yeah,
before, so
help me out here. Yeah, I mean I've done that before. There was one that I wanted years ago that I DM. I think it was like at Griff or something like that on Twitter,
mm,
and I DM'd the guy like a good dozen times over the course of like a year and a half, and like he didn't use his account, didn't do anything with it. It was just sitting there like fucking wasting space, and yeah, he never responded because it's probably like an inactive email. Like he probably made it when Twitter came out, and then he was like, "This app is stupid," which is true. Like Twitter, as
I
much
d-
as I love it, it's fucking dumb.
uh,
Uh,
Twitter is supreme for me.
yeah, well, it's the best
Like
thing on earth, but we really
social
shouldn't be
media
on
in
it.
general is very dangerous. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. Social media is the devil, but it's a devil that
But
we clearly are into.
yes, and I think people should take advantage and use all social media platforms to follow us. So
Exactly,
that
exactly. So
you
you're
know,
you're 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 you're, you're getting it. You know what you're talking
still
about. You're ready
still a
to promote
capitalist
the
at heart,
brand.
Griffin.
What's up?
I said still a capitalist at heart. You know
Oh
that.
yeah, of course, of course, of course. Well, good to be back. Last week we talked the Atlantic and Pacific divisions, and we came away with the pretty likely situation of the Lakers and the Nets winning their divisions. This week we're going to be talking the Southeast and the Southwest divisions. Much like last week, Ferentinos took the teams in the East. I took the teams in the West. Kind of makes sense for our geographical location. Who knows?
Beast
Maybe we'll
Coast.
switch it up next week. I don't know. Play it by ear. But if you want to jump into it, I mean, we can run down the teams that are in those divisions. If there's anything you want to get into beforehand, I know you were telling me there's a lot of weird history to the Southeast Division in particular, probably because there's expansion teams in there.
Yes, I was doing my research on the history of teams. I like to see when the franchises were founded. Like their pedigree as far as championships and things like that. And I discovered that the Hornets and Heat came out actually in the same year in the same expansion draft in 1988. The Heat was a little more successful because of LeBron James and Dwayne Wade than the
And
Hornets.
Pat Riley
Yeah, and Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq was a
and
beast on
Shaq
that 0506
and
team.
Spo. I mean, the Heat have been they've been a fairly blessed team in their relatively short history.
They kind of remind me of like, I guess if I was like equivalent NFL team, like the Ravens, they kind of came on like 96, 7, I think is when they came to the NFL, but they've been like a consistently good team. I feel like I can't remember too many seasons when the Heat were like a dumpster fire garbage team. Like they've always been really consistent, kind of like the Pacers in that way. Like the Pacers have always been middle of the pack, really good team.
Yeah, yeah. Pacers. Who was I going to say? Kind of not exactly the same, but a little bit like if you go to the MLB, you look at the Cardinals. Obviously, the Cardinals are a much older team, but the
Mm,
Cardinals, if you look at their history, They've basically always had a good organization. They've basically always been coached well. They haven't always had superstar players, but literally, basically, since their inception, outside of the occasional, very occasional down year, they've been at the very least a 500 team or made the playoffs. So, like, I know we don't necessarily think of a place like St. Louis as being like a crazy sports town, but for 100+ years, they've been blessed for good sports. So,
not a fan of the Cardinals in general either, but I do agree they are consistently like
just
very,
like
very
like
good.
you don't like the Bird, you don't like the Arizona team, like you don't like what do you hate about the Cardinals?
I mean, I can't say I'm a fan of really any of the Cardinals when you put it that way. The actual
Sure.
bird itself, though, it's pretty dope. My
No
grandpa
beef.
had like a
No beef with birds.
they had like a bird feeder in the backyard. It was pretty sweet. I saw some like different birds, and there'd be a cardinal every now and then, and like the red popped and like the pointy head. So it was,
Yeah,
it was cool.
it's a cool looking bird. I'm not gonna shit on the bird. I will say, I don't really think about the Arizona Cardinals, even though I lived there for 3 years, so I probably should have thought about them more, I guess.
ASU.
But St. Louis, yeah, go fuck yourselves. Like I have never rooted for that team. I will never root for that team. I recognize their history. I respect their history. But fuck them. But
Love
yeah,
it.
yeah. So definitely to get back to NBA talk, what we're here to
Yeah.
do.
So
There is some history in this division.
and this division, kind of like the Atlantic division, and I was going through like besides, there's one team where actually there's a few teams in this division where I just don't see it going too well. But like the top three in here, I think, and I put Charlotte in those top three. I think they could be contenders and be, teams that could potentially make a run at least to the second round until they run into the Bucks or the Nets in the playoffs. But
Sure.
yeah, I can get started. So the team that I have projected as the worst team this year in the Southeast Division is the Orlando Magic.
Okay.
So Orlando,
Right.
and it's going to be like, although I project them to be the worst team, this is going to be a really fun team to watch because they just have so many young guys working together. I'm really excited to see like how the development goes. I think they could have like really good offensive nights. Defense could be suspect. I feel like with younger players who haven't really been in the system too long, haven't really played together, that's going to take time to adjust. We'll see how Jamal Mosley, who's the coach this year, runs together. We haven't seen that at all. They got a new coach last year. It was Steve Clifford. And I could kind of run through how they did last year. They were 21-51, so bottom of the Eastern Conference. They had 104 points per game, which was 29th of 30th. Opponents was 113, which is 20th. So just really bad on offense and defense.
Yeah.
Um,
Not
you
lighting
know,
the world
they're-
on fire. They
their
also they
championship
traded
odds,
a number
yeah.
of guys. They kind of blew it up last year. They traded.
There's a
Aaron
lot
Gordon.
of turnover, and they did
They
get
traded
Jalen
Vucci
Suggs.
Main.
Yeah, so like projected starters this year, they have Cole Anthony. Well, the thing with the Magic too is that they have a lot of guards. They have a lot of young guards that they can play, and we'll see who rises to the top, because this year you have Markelle Fultz coming back from injury, who he's been injured his whole career. He had the weird thing with the shoulder, number one pick for the Sixers, but he's shown flashes and he was the number one pick for a reason. I mean, the dude had a jump shot. I feel like there are days where my right shoulder hurts and I can't shoot. I haven't like completely reworked my shooting, motion. I don't know what was
Sure.
going on there, but Jalen Suggs, fifth pick of the draft, shooting guard from Gonzaga. A lot of people thought that he was going to go, maybe first overall in the draft. So when, he fell to 5, Orlando was thrilled. I've been watching him in preseason, and he just looks like an NBA, stud. He looks like he's got the smooth jumper from mid-range. I just think he's going to be a really interesting player to see develop. But with their lineup in general, it's Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, Terrence Ross. Shout out to Elliott. He was former Raptor.
Yeah, T. Ross.
Wendell
They
Carter
lived
Jr.
and died by Terrence Ross from time to time. There were times where he was a shot maker, and then there were times where he was like, I'm going to put up fucking 20 shots this game and make 4 of them.
Yeah,
but he had some clutch moments for that team.
Yeah, not everyone is Kevin Durant. But
That's true.
On the bench, they also got Michael Carter Williams, NCW, Gary Harris, who I've always liked. I think he's been a good player for the Nuggets. He's always been, a solid rotational shooting guard that's put in good minutes. Franz Wagner, their second pick in the draft that they took 8th overall. Mo Bamba, because he's got the song. He's awesome, and he's just like a super tall center that's still young and exciting. And
I'm
then they got
I'm I'm hearing a lot of positive buzz about Mo Bamba this year. He's finally now that Steve Clifford is not the coach anymore. Pretty sure Steve Clifford is not the coach anymore. Apparently,
no,
Mo
yeah,
Bamba.
it's Jamal Mosley this year.
Right. Apparently, Mo Bamba is actually finally getting a little bit of burn, and he's apparently looked great in training camp. He looked great in preseason, and they're no longer he's no longer the third guy on their depth chart because he's not behind Vucevic Man anymore. So I'm saying right now, and you may disagree with me, I'm going to say Mo Bamba breakout year, and I'm also hoping Mo Bamba breakout year because every single year I draft him in fantasy, and every single year he sucks shit. So hopefully this is the year where it's worthwhile.
Could be the year, and then another guy coming back from injury that they have is Jonathan Isaac. So
yeah,
with this team, a lot of young guys, new pieces working together. Kind of excited to see how they develop. I'm excited to see how Jamal Mosley, who was an assistant coach in Denver, Cleveland, and then Dallas. He's been coaching since for 15, 20 years or so before coming to Orlando. But with that said, again, because of all those reasons that I listed, I think that they're going to be the bottom of the division. Their projected over under is 31.5. I have them going 30 and 52. So right around there. And the Magic were actually founded a season or two after the Hornets and the Heat came into the league. So founded in 1989, and they've had 16 playoff appearances with 0 titles.
It was a good couple years for Florida. Got two teams in back-to-back years. Don't know if you've seen the Shaq and Penny documentary that came out years ago, but they talked a lot about the Magic during that and how Disney was fairly influential or instrumental, I guess, in the founding of that team. Obviously, that's why they are the Magic. Because of
and the old logo is so Disney,
super Disney inspired. They were hoping that people
wearing those jerseys,
people going to Orlando that were going to go to Disney World, they were hoping there was going to be a lot of crossover between them and Magic games. Don't think outside of the Shaq and Dwight years that really ended up being the case. I don't think they've ever really knocked it out of the park in terms of attendance, and they haven't really had hugely successful years. Otherwise, last year they were probably one of the most attended teams because they were one of the only arenas that was open to almost full capacity the entire year. But outside of that, I think they're usually kind of at the bottom of the league. If you had to pick one guy, I don't think there's a single. I might be wrong. I don't think there's a single all-star on their roster. If you had to pick somebody, it doesn't have to be an all-star, but if you had to pick somebody on that team to have a breakout year this year, or to just be their best player, and obviously the easy answer is Jalen Suggs. Ignoring Jalen Suggs, who's going to be the best player on that roster?
I mean, I'd like to see Markelle Fultz come back from injury and look strong. When he's been in, he's had really good flashes. He's just got to get on the court and stay on the court. And then second-year player, Chuma Okeke's active defender, beast on the boards. If he can, develop his mid-range game and get something going on offense, he could be a fun player for them to watch too.
Okay. All right, yeah. I'm like I said, I'm holding out hope for Mo Bamba. I think Gary Harris might have a good year with a little bit less pressure on him to be a major performer. I think he might be like a decent six man. We'll see how it plays out between him and some other guys in their rotation. I do agree with you probably that they're going to be at the bottom of the division because largely the rest of the division, while not genuine contenders, they're at least trying to make the playoffs. I think the Magic are probably the only team in this division that are actively not trying to make the playoffs. Yeah.
Well, some would say that my next team is actively not trying to make the playoffs either. But
I feel like your next team is probably going to be the Wizards, and we'll get to that when we get to them. But let's jump over to the Southwest Division, and we're going to go with my number 5 team, a team that is definitely not going to make the playoffs. And I think this one's pretty easy. It's the home of my guy John Wall. It's the Rockets. The awful ass flex to the left Rockets. Yeah. Look. They were bad last year. They were bad.
Yeah.
they were atrocious. They were almost historically bad, and they may have been historically bad if it had been a full season. And
Started with
this
the James
year,
Harden tank, yeah, so it
yeah,
was
yeah,
not going well.
they lost James Harden. They added John Wall, and they honestly like kind of ignored. They started off the season pretty well, and then Christian Wood got injured. They lost James
Yeah.
Harden. John Wall got injured, came back, became a tank commander. Like there was a lot of bad stuff happening on that. That team blew itself up. Nothing good happened.
Yeah.
Obviously, to begin with, Russell Westbrook forced his way off before the season started. Came to the Wizards, but just kind of top to bottom, not a talented roster. I mean, John Wall, if he's healthy, at this point, he's a top 15 point guard, maybe, because I mean he's on the wrong side of 30. He's a speed first guy. As much as I love him, I don't think he's ever going to reclaim the heights he used to have. Eric Gordon, fine. DJ Augustin, good, fine. Uh, uh, Christian Wood, if he is healthy and plays to his ability level, is going to be one of the better big men in the league.
He was a
But
baller.
he doesn't
had
have a
lot of good
roster around him
styles.
that's really going to do a whole lot for him. The real guy that I want to watch this season, and I see you highlighted him on my little Google sheet, is Jaylen
Yeah.
Green. A lot of people, you know, are
He
there
was
was a
money
lot
in
of
the preseason game, pulling up
Right.
from three that I was
Absolutely
watching. Like,
money in
he's got it in
preseason.
rhythm. Yeah.
apparently was absolutely money in pre-draft workouts. There was a lot of argument between the 1 and 2 or between the 1 and 2 guys as we got closer to the draft this year between Cade and Jaylen. I mean, I'm a Cade guy. I think he is going to be the better player, but I will say I think Jaylen is probably more NBA ready than him because pretty
Yeah.
much every element of his offensive game is fairly polished out of the gate. So they're going to be a bad team. Vegas has them at 27.5 wins. I think they're probably under that.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, like, I think Vegas is probably giving him a little bit of boost because of health to some of the guys that weren't healthy last year. And then, you have the occasional game with a super polished prospect like Jaylen Green. He's going to win you some games just based on talent alone. I've got him at
The West is
25
so
wins.
good.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're going to be playing teams. The majority of the West is going to be angling between 40 and 55 wins. Like I said last week, I don't see anybody being in the 60s, and I don't see that many teams being under 30. But the teams that are going to be under 30, like the Rockets, are going to be torn to shreds. Like they're not going to be able to compete, and they're going to lose a lot of games to a lot of talented teams that are trying to keep their guys ready for the playoffs and are going to be vying for a playoff spot. So, we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I have them at 25 wins. I could see them being 5 below that. Honestly, I could see them being significantly below my prediction. And Vegas having them at 27.5 is honestly surprising to me. So
the Kings Rockets toilet bowl sounds about right this year.
I think the Kings are going to be definitively better than the Rockets because they've got more guys that are.
Because exactly, there's two guys that we talked about that might be okay for the Rockets, and you have to
And so much of it is going to be based on their health.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to anybody that's in the chat right now. I saw Giraffe Choreographer. What's up, man? Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you tuning in. Make sure, if you're on Twitter and you see us tweet anything, you hit us with that like, hit us with that retweet, tell your friends about us, tell us that we're tell them that we're live right now. We'll be talking for, the next 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever. But that's the number 5 team in the Southwest Division. I will say ahead of time, this is not one of the great divisions of the sport. There's obviously the Spurs are a historically great team before we even get into them later. But Pelicans, pretty much a never ran. The Grizz, they had some great grit and grind years. They've got a lot of great players that have come through that team, but they've never really reached super great heights. The Rockets obviously had the Hakeem years, but and they've had great players.
Harden,
you have the James Harden
for almost a decade. They
were playoff contenders for a long time.
If it wasn't for the Warriors, the Rockets definitely would have been in some finals, if not won some finals.
There's an argument that 2017 team is or 2016 team, whatever it was, is one of the best teams ever. Like they had an MVP guard. Like they were good at everything, and then just bad strategic choices knocked him out of the playoffs. And then the Mavs, they're not a historically great team, but they were very good for a very long amount of time. A lot of that was because of who their
Dirk.
superstar was. Dirk carried them for a long time. They had a lot of really good players go through that team. They at different times had been point guard whisperers for different teams between Nash and Kidd and now Luka, if we want to call him a point guard instead of a point forward. So not a division that's won a huge number of titles, but by and large one that has had competitive teams. We're just in the period now where a lot of them are kind of in the midst of a rebuild or getting back to those contendership heights.
Love it. Yeah, I can't wait to talk. I mean, like you said, not like the most historically winning franchises, but I think a lot of those teams are really interesting to, talk about this year. A lot of great young superstars on all of those teams that just make them fun to watch, and games that I tend to watch on YouTube the next day just because who doesn't love watching John Morant, Luka, and Zion? Like those are all just so much.
Yeah, there's so much young talent in that in the division, and it's a lot of like each team's got one superstar who could be like the next guy up. And obviously a lot of people think Luka's going to be the one, but Zion's got that chance. And there's guys on the Pels who, when they were on the Lakers, and we talked about it last week, there's multiple guys on the Lakers that people thought were going to be superstar, or guys on the Pels, excuse me, that people thought were going to be superstars in the Lakers. And they still have that potential. Brandon Ingram could still be that guy. I don't know. I don't see it happening, but could happen.
Yeah.
He could be a all-star for a long time.
No, I mean, exactly. Like, and he's one of those guys that I think we talked about last episode, just about, him being the measurable was like KD was the guy that was his like biggest draft comparison and like NBA comparison at the time. And he has games where he looks really good and is just on target, but then there are a lot of games where he's just putting up bricks. Still has a great smooth jumper, but it's just not falling for him.
And there's games even outside of just putting up bricks. There's some games where he just doesn't seem like he's mentally fully there. Like sometimes he gives off that vibe, and I know part of it is just the way he looks. So part of it is just dealing with your own biases towards like the guy who kind of always looks like he's high. But there are very much games where he doesn't seem engaged, and he won't be engaged in the defensive end. And if he doesn't get himself going early on the offensive end, then he kind of sits it out a little bit. And, he needs to get over that hump if he wants to be a consistent all-star in the league. He's got the talent. The talent is 100% there. I think we've all seen it the past few years, especially since he left the Lakers. But is the drive there? Is the day in, day out, like, I'm going to win this game motivation there? Now he's got to deal with sorry, I'm just going to say he's got to deal with working from some of the same positions as Zion now.
Yeah.
So they're gonna kind of, do they have the best fit, or is Ingram gonna need to go elsewhere? Because I think that team's gonna choose Zion if they've got to pick somebody.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. If Zion doesn't choose somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which
which
his family, his
buzz,
camp. It seems like
that's the buzz around the league.
Yeah. But I was going to say, speaking of guys that left the Lakers, let's talk about my number 4 team in the division for the Southeast. The Washington Wizards, or as my father calls them, the Bullets.
I'm currently wearing a Bullets hat, so I call them the Bullets too. Bullets forever.
Let's go Bullets.
Let's go Bullets, baby.
Head coach this year, Wes Unseld. And I was just looking at this team again because I knew that they had switched things up, and I knew that they had, gotten a lot of turnover, a lot of new players, but I just forgot how different this roster actually is. And it just was one of those things that I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be a really fun team to watch. I'm excited to watch them. The Anthony Davis boys basically are here on the Wizards, but it's,
let's be very clear as well. Wes Unseld Jr. is the Wizards coach. Wes Unseld, his father, won a championship with us, but he is also very much dead, passed away last year. Which is just sad that the year after his father dies, he becomes the coach of the team that Wes won a championship with.
And I was going to say, I think on like Basketball Reference, when just looking up the franchise, the number 1 player when you bring up the Bullets was Wes Unseld.
Yeah, I mean, he's a huge part of the franchise. a guy that doesn't get his due because of when he played, because he was in kind of that not so sweet spot of the late '70s, where basketball had taken a pretty significant backseat
Yeah,
prior to the Bird and Magic years, where they really brought the league back and had superstar attention
exactly.
again.
Before then, and then Jordan in '85 taking the
Yeah,
torch,
yeah,
and then it being what it is today.
yeah. But
But
tell me about the Wizards. Tell me about my team in the East,
yeah, let me tell you
and
about your team.
how they're not going to make the playoffs this year. And I might agree with you.
So, I mean, Wes Unseld Jr. is definitely better than your favorite coach, Scotty Brooks.
God
Last year,
damn
they
you.
were 34 and 38, eighth in the NBA Eastern Conference. So, just in that playoff territory. They could score. I mean, they put up points and a lot of points. They put up 116 per game. They played actually the fastest pace of any team in the NBA. But their defense, with points per game, third of 30th. Their defense was literally dead last, giving up 118 points per game, 30 of 30th. Their over under this year is 32 and a half. And I have them going 34 and 38. So maybe play in territory. They could sneak into the, back of the playoffs here in the East. And, with a lot of things and a lot of these teams, like we have our predictions, but injury or two could really derail a lot of teams, with the Hornets. And the reason I like the Hornets is with Gordon Hayward, they were a really good team. Few games over 500. We're about fourth, fifth seed in the East. Hayward goes down. That's a completely different team, a completely different looking team. And they just need a lot to go, different. And, so just with injuries, anything could happen.
Yep.
But where I have the Wizards right now, sitting right there at that like 34, or actually I have them at 36 and 46. So still 4 games over what their Vegas over under is.
Vegas
Team
has
was
them at
founded,
32.
yeah, 32.
God,
and a
that
half.
hurts. That's tough. A team with Bradley Beal. Oh,
I
32
mean,
wins.
they could score. They could score. Is he because this is important. Is he vaccinated?
I don't think so. No,
Bad.
and I actually wanted to bring that up with somebody that you had mentioned earlier, Jonathan Isaac. I don't think Jonathan
Yeah,
Isaac's vaccinated either. I mean, neither one of them. So it is
really.
important to note, neither one of them are in cities that require it. And I
So
think
they could play
because
their home games.
yes, they can play their home games and they can play the majority of their away games. I think the only places that they're going to run into issues are with the Knicks, the Nets, and then obviously the
Lakers.
Warriors, and potentially the Lakers and Clippers as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, they haven't done anything yet, but I know that they might follow suit, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So there is a chance that they're going to miss games because of that. Bradley Beal, I have got a lot of frustration towards him right now because of the way that he's handled all this. How he's just asking questions and shit like that. I hate that. I hate that
Yeah.
particular mode of thinking. I'm not afraid to say it. I absolutely loathe saying shit like that when you say some shit that's morally super ambiguous. He did say, he just got over COVID. His 60 days passed from when he got COVID fairly recently. So it's only within the past couple weeks that he is eligible to get the vaccine. We will see if he gets it. Hopefully there's pressure from within the organization for him to get it. But yeah, I mean, if we do miss our superstar shooting guard, the guy who is going to have the ball in his hands the majority of the time, that's multiple losses right now that we can basically look forward to. Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, there was weirder things have happened where superstar players have gone out and teams have still won games because you got a game plan against them very differently. But I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with your prediction about the Wizards. I think that we're a lot closer to a 500 team. I think we're going to have the most Wizards finish of all time, which we've done before, and go 41 and 41 and miss the playoffs. I think this is probably the deepest Wizards roster there's been maybe in
They
the
have a decent. I mean,
past 15 years.
When you look at their lineup, depending on how they want to go small ball or not, like Rui Hachimura could potentially be on the bench, which I think is one of their best, most exciting young players to watch.
I think he should be on the bench. I'm of the mind that especially because he just came back from whatever personal leave he had today. So he missed all of preseason. He's missed all of training camp thus far. We're only about a week out from the season, less than that, I think, 6 days. I think, the way that Kuzma's been playing in preseason, and the fact that Kuzma just got done, not a deep playoff run, but he got done with 2 playoff runs back to back, one of which went to the finals and then immediately transitioned into a season. Like, he's still a young guy. His legs are still under him. He's ready to go and he's ready to contribute. So let him be the starter, and then let Roy earn his way into the starting lineup and potentially turn Kuzma into a 6 or 7 man.
I love the Kyle Kuzma hype. It reminds me of hearing like Josh talk up Daniel Jones. Like, I just don't think he's a great player, but
I know how you and many of our friends feel about Kyle Kuzma, but I have been buying stock on Kyle Kuzma Island, Kuzma Land, as I like to call it, since his debut in Summer League, and I will continue to do
when him
so.
and Lonzo were the champions.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I will continue to do so until he is out of the league, because I think, who he showed himself to be the first year with the Lakers was far more indicative of who he is as a player than those couple LeBron years. I don't think. I mean, he learned how to do the dirty work, I'll say. He became a great rebounder. He became a passable defender after being atrocious. He regressed as an offensive player, but he never had a legitimate role in the offense. And
he was a catch and shoot guy that got hot, I feel like.
But the thing is, he's not a catch and shoot guy. He's a rhythm player who needs the ball in his hands to score, and they turned him into a catch and shoot guy, and he's bad at it. He can't be a catch and shoot guy, which is why I think it makes a little bit more sense for him to be a bench player, because you could have him be one of the guys leading a second unit.
6-man minutes.
Yeah. And rather than pairing him, once Roy joins the starting lineup, you've got enough scoring in the starting unit where you don't need a guy like Kuzma. But then in the bench squad, maybe he's your primary scorer. Like, he's taking pressure off of Beal, so Beal doesn't have a repeat of last year playing 42 minutes a game.
And with how much they scored last year, I think they could still keep it up this year. And I think, if anything, the additions that they got are going to help with that. I mean, I love Spencer Dinwiddie. I think he was great. And if he could have came back in time,
guys.
I think the Nets, if Dinwiddie was able to go, the last 2 games against the Bucks, would have been a huge difference for him there. So they got, Spencer Dinwiddie, Bradley Beal, KCP, Kyle Kuzma, Daniel Gafford with the projected starters right now, with Aaron Holiday, Corey Kispert. They got Neto Hachimura, Montrezl Harrell, and then your favorite, Bertans.
Oh,
Speaking of catch and shoot 3 guys.
So apparently Bertans has shown up in shape this year. So he's not been good in the preseason so far, but he is apparently in shape. So that's already better than the first 8 weeks of his season last year. That's a huge jump from where he was this time last year.
Yes, and I mean, like, if Bradley Beal plays all their games, like, he is a really exciting player to watch. He's definitely one of the premier guys, if you were to hit the market, with the old Ben Simmons and now Kyrie Irving kind of up in the air. When they talk about like the trade market in the NBA, Bradley Beal's one of those names of the guys thrown around that could want to go to maybe like a Lakers or a Nets, if, just one of the contending teams and one of the, bigger landing spots for a guy that wants another superstar. I mean, his scoring ability is sought after. He's a bucket. There's a lot of times where in the fourth quarter he's too gassed because he literally was carrying the team the entire game, which how much can you ask a guy to do when he literally is the reason that it's in a close game when it should have been a blowout, which the Wizards were on a lot of the end of, I feel like, a lot of games where they put up 125 and then got outscored 140 or something like that. Like, they scored a lot of games. They were a lot of fun to watch with Russ. I mean, I thought he
sometimes
brought a lot of energy to that team.
Not at the start of the season. Not at the start of the season, they were not. But as time went on, I mean, I talked about it on Twitter a day or 2 ago. Russ is who he is. He starts slow. He'll have a stretch of 50 games where he is one of the best players on earth. And then he'll start to regress right towards the end of the season because he's pushed himself too hard. And then playoffs get there. He'll turn into a one-man army, but not a very successful one-man army. And he'll lose in 6.
Yeah.
And it's the story of Russ, and it's unfortunate because he's better than he shows himself to be, and he already shows himself to be so spectacularly good. Like, I'm not going to slander Russell Westbrook's name.
Oh,
he's
I never
he's
will. I mean,
insanely good at basketball, and I hate people that
he's
just
a
talk about
Laker
him like
now,
he's
so you
not
can't
good.
really slander him.
Right, right. Although that's kind of not how most Lakers fans are. Most Lakers fans, you get a guy on your team. If you got a superstar on your team, they immediately become the worst player ever in the minds of Lakers fans. And if
Oh,
you
they
have like
better,
some
yeah.
like random role player, like a Alex Caruso, you're like, oh,
Crusoe.
like he's clearly a max contract guy. He should be the highest paid guy on this roster because he does the dirty work.
Hey, Chicago gave him a lot of money.
Yeah, they gave him 40 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Good for him. He deserved it. I mean, he does deserve it. The way the NBA contracts are now, I would say it's honestly maybe a little bit of an underpay what he got
Yeah.
because of the way that he plays the game.
No,
He's the kind of guy that elevates you into a mid-level contender.
that's exact. And like how you're talking about how Kuzma really improved his game by becoming a more well-rounded role player. Caruso's kind of always done that and given the effort. And then, his offensive game has improved. His shooting was improving. He was working on it. But he had all of those things that make him a great role player, like already there.
Yeah.
And just able to build on that. And I mean, obviously to a superstar level, that like Kawhi Leonard was a guy that came out as more of a defensive specialist that then developed an offensive game. Paul George was the same way. I mean, there are a lot of guys that just have the intangibles and are just like, physical nightmares on matchups for defense. And then they could get a bag in the NBA. If they get a jump shot, they get some post moves. And I mean, like, these guys are just, amazing. And some people like Joel Embiid don't even start playing until they're 18 years old. So it just shows like how much their skills can develop and how short of a time if they really, put work in, kind of like a Julius Randle bump last year. And
Yeah.
you see a lot of guys in their second year in the league make a huge leap. And it's just getting used to the speed of the game, what works, what doesn't, getting the flow for it. But overall, I think the Wizards are going to be a fun team to watch. Hope to go to some games this year. Always love going to Wizards games. But
Have the
I don't see
best
him
time.
having. I don't see him having
Have
too
a
hot
great
of a
time.
season.
Get me on FaceTime. Let me know you're there. I'm gonna miss being able to go to these games. I've had a lot of great times at Wizards games. Obviously the last couple years, I kind of took a stand against the Wizards a little bit. Where first I wanted Ernie Grunfeld fired, and then I wanted Scott Brooks fired, so I wasn't going to games. And then COVID happened, and no one was going to games. But yeah, I'm always rooting for my Wizards. I want them to be successful. Bullets forever. You know what it is.
Oh, of course.
I think, like I said, I think they're going to be 41 and 41. I think they're going to beat Vegas projections. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They might. I mean, I guess
41 to 41 would definitely make it in the East.
Let me I think it'll make a play-in game.
Yeah.
I think there are enough good teams at this point that's probably like an 8 or 9 seed. Maybe a 7 seed, depending on like if certain teams are really feasting on others.
I still feel like the bottom two are always tend to be a game or two under 500, just because a lot of those teams that we do envision being good when healthy do have a superstar or two that misses stretches of games, and then just losses do pile up.
Yeah, the Wizards have no excuse to be 41 and 41 based on the talent of their roster. They should be closer to 45 wins. You have like maybe the second best shooting guard in basketball, a guy who also handles the ball more. He's essentially a combo guard at this point in Bradley Beal, the second best scorer by the numbers in basketball, and you're projected to be 10 games under 500. That's not acceptable. You got to be better than that. That's my own bias coming through. I hope your predictions are wrong. That's all I'm going to say.
I'd love to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
It's good when DC has good sports teams.
Yeah, we're going to be bad
Except
in a lot of sports
team.
for a while, so I would like if the Wizards were good.
Nice. Who you got as your second worst team?
Yeah, so in the 4 spot in the Southwest Division, I've got the Spurs. And look, Vegas has them at 28.5 wins. I've got them probably closer to 25, 26. It's not really a knock on, obviously it's not a knock on the coaching. I mean, Greg Popovich, another guy who I will not put slander on his name, but they just don't really have that much talent on the roster. They've got a bunch of guys that would be bench pieces elsewhere. I mean, the best player on their roster, probably Murray. Maybe. I don't even know who the best player on their roster would be. I'm looking through it right now.
Let's take a look. I like Deante Murray a lot. Is he in his
Yeah,
fourth season now? I feel like he's been what I think
he's
of as
he's
like
he's
first,
4 or 5
second year player
years in
for
the
a
league.
while.
Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah.
they most of their best players they left. DeMar DeRozan obviously gone. Rudy Gay gone. Patty Mills
I like
gone.
Lonnie Walker. Lonnie Walker's not bad. He's got flashes.
Yeah, but is
Um,
he a guy that you want in your starting lineup? Like you want a guy with flashes as one of your primary. I mean, like like I said, they've got a lot of role players. They've got a lot of guys where if you took them from this team and you slotted them in on championship contenders, they would be really good bench pieces. But their roster
yeah.
is essentially made up of bench pieces, partially due to how good the Spurs were for so long. They were never able to get really good draft picks, and then when they thought that they were going to turn the roster over and have the Kawhi years, we all know how that went.
Yeah.
So they never really had a chance for a legitimate rebuild. They had DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge for a while, kind of just scraping together 500 seasons on talent and on coaching. But the Spurs really probably should have blown it up 2 or 3 years ago, and that they weren't able to because of, you know, a guy like DeMar DeRozan or a guy like Marcus Aldridge is not looking to blow it up. They're looking to contend. They're looking to compete. So they kind of kept rotating guys into their cast of characters, and now they're at a point where their assets aren't particularly great. Their roster is not particularly great. Pop is probably a couple years from retirement. I don't think he's got a much longer run left in him.
Yeah, especially with the team, it's more of a rebuilding type,
Yeah, I don't know
atmosphere.
if a guy like
Pop
him
is
is
a
going to
great
want to be there
players
for a
coach.
full rebuild.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
that's no knock on him. You've been doing this as the head coach of this team at this point for 25 years. That's an incredibly long time to be working that kind of job and have that kind of stress in your life. You lost your wife a couple years ago. You probably want to spend, your later years kind of doing your own thing. Maybe he stays as like an executive in the organization or something, or maybe they let him buy into the organization. I don't know what kind of
maybe
money
he's
he's
staying
made.
because he likes the women in San Antonio, like Charles
Yeah, he
Barkley
likes
likes
those big women in San Antonio with their churros and their tacos. I think it's better when Chuck makes those jokes instead of us. Probably wouldn't put us on Inside NBA, but yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say about the Spurs. I wish I had more to say about them. I think the only reason that they are going to be ahead of the Rockets, despite probably having less guys that are actually like potential stars, is because Pop is such a good coach that he's going to try and wring every win out of this roster that he can. I don't see him as the kind of guy that's going to openly tank. He'll probably win. He'll be winning for 80% of a lot of games on coaching decisions alone, and then he'll rest his starters and lose some games. But I see him winning 25 games. I don't think they're going to be even remotely close to a playoff spot, and I think this is going to be a development year for a lot of these guys. And then I think a lot of these guys are probably not going to be on this roster next year. I think they're likely going to be traded off as assets, either for picks or for some like lower tier stars that they can rebuild around. Because you've got a good cast of role players here. So we'll see. Like I said, I've got them fourth, and we'll jump back to the Southeast.
Yeah, I got really nothing more to add on the Spurs, but
yeah, they're just not a particularly exciting roster this year. And
no.
You can say that about a lot of Spurs rosters, but a lot of Spurs rosters were not exciting with, Manu Ginobili and Tim Duncan,
Tony Parker,
all the Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard. Like they were not sexy. They were not like the flashiest rosters, but you were guaranteed 55 wins a season. So who cares?
Yeah, and they literally, up until a few years ago, had like they were basically, I feel like the Spurs and Patriots were almost those two teams who were so dominant, where like they were always extremely good. I mean, people forget the Spurs won like 68 games when the Warriors won 73, when they were 73-9. Like I think they won the most games ever for a second seed, and we're still a huge star-studded, really dominant team. They've always come up and won titles, as long as they've been. Like, just when you think Tom Brady can't do it, he wins another title 10 years later. It's kind of the same thing with the trio in San Antonio. Getting Kawhi Leonard helped them make that leap when those guys were older, and they, Pop was always been known to kind of rest stars to the NBA, I'm sure it wasn't their favorite thing when they put him in primetime slots and then they're resting Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili. But, it just hasn't been that the past 3-4 years.
Yeah,
And with
yeah, I
DeRozan
think
gone especially too, I mean, he was fun to watch there when he left Toronto for those few years, but they were, they weren't really that great anyways.
yeah,
It's a 3-point league and they didn't have 3-point shooting.
yeah, and DeMar DeRozan in 2021 can't be your first option. LaMarcus Aldridge can't be your first option. Like Rudy Gay can't be your first option. These guys are all tier 2, tier 3 stars. And I actually believe in DeMar DeRozan more than a lot of people. I think that there is certainly a place for his kind of game on a lot of squads, but you've got to hide his deficiencies, primarily his shooting from beyond the arc and his defense. His defense is atrocious.
Yeah.
But having a guy like him, a bucket getter, who's also become a really good distributor, is a really great guy to have if he's your second or third option. Can't be your first option. And so the Spurs they were fundamentally created poorly. And like I said earlier, that's because of the Kawhi trade. It's because Pop was unwilling to trade with the Lakers. And so he took, or with other teams in the West. And so he took the best package available to him from the East, which was with the Raptors. Jacob Poeltl, a couple picks. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan, maybe one or two other players, I can't recall. And then they lost Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard. And those were the guys that, by and large, made that offense and that defense run. So the Spurs immediately got significantly worse. And there's a lot of work to be done on that roster and in that organization at this point, as a lot of guys are aging out, to replace them.
Pop is turning to grandpop.
Yep.
He's about to retire.
You hate to see it, but he's had a hell of a run.
Yeah.
Not a lot of guys have had a better run. 5 titles, 20 straight years of 50-win seasons. Didn't miss the playoffs for 21 years, I think, something like that. Like, yeah, you could say he had Tim Duncan on his team, but, like, is Tim Duncan going to be Tim Duncan if he's playing for the Magic? I don't know. He did almost play for the Magic. He almost got traded to the Magic. But that's fine. We've focused on the Spurs enough. I don't want to talk about them anymore. I don't want to talk about San Antonio.
Yeah, let's talk about a more fun team, more fun city.
Yeah, let's go
to Miami.
To a better team. Yeah, let's go to Miami. Let's go to Miami. For a time, one of the rivals of San Antonio during those LeBron years.
Yep. No, they were definitely those finals. Those are great finals. And I'll never just had some really great matchups back in the early 2012s. The Heat were the more successful of the pair with the Charlotte Hornets that came in. I think I talked about that earlier. They got the 3 ships. They're coached by Eric Spoelstra, which I've always loved Eric Spoelstra as a coach. I thought he's been a great coach. He's been successful, every season that he's been in the league. Last year they were 40-32, 6th in the Eastern Conference. Pat Riley, ever since he's been there, they've been really consistent, and they've been, with Spoelstra, always a very well-coached team. And I could tell that by the defensive rating, 5th of 30th. They score 108 points and give up 108 points. So offensively, they could use a little boost. Defensively, they play really well. Their over-under for this season is 43.5. I have them going 42-40. Okay. So right around 500, but again, good enough to be in the back of the East. I probably, I could see them being either the 6 or the 7 and have to be in the play in there. But it's going to be a fun, exciting roster to look at and a fun team to watch. They got Kyle Lowry, new addition from Toronto. Shout out to Elliott. They got Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker is a new addition, came from the Bucks, and Bam Adebayo, who maybe, I think definitely one of the top 3 centers in the league, 5 centers who
getting better every single day.
Play center. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to think of more like a traditional center. Like defensively, what he brings, he's such a solid piece there. And they got Markieff Morris, who wasn't really great at shooting last year, kind of fell off, but the Morris twins have always been solid rotational players, especially since he's not in their starting lineup. Tyler Hero, I've heard, has put on a lot of lean muscle in the off season. So
that's because he's a dad now.
I did see that.
Got that dad weight.
Yeah.
He also
Can't,
did you see what he said about the tier of stars that he'd like to be included in?
no, I did not see that.
I think he said Luca, Trey, and somebody else. He was like, I think I'm right there with those guys. And I'm gonna misquote him, but there was essentially the intent behind it, and the internet went fucking crazy.
I mean, you got to be confident, right?
How right, exactly? That's my thinking on it. You got to be confident, and also let's not forget that this guy is, because of how weird the past 2 years were season wise, the past 2 seasons, excuse me. He's only a year removed from averaging, from putting up stupid numbers in the Eastern Conference Finals and then the finals, and he's only a season removed from in his second year averaging like 15, 5, and 3. Like he had a good year last year. But people were like, "Oh, this 20-year-old's not good enough at basketball. He's not as good as Trey Young or Luka Doncic." Like,
But in the
why
finals,
is that the bar?
Yeah, in the bubble season, he definitely had one of those breakout seasons, and a lot of people looked at him as a young, exciting piece on the Heat. Yeah, he didn't live up to it in his last season, but he still played well.
And he's got a great song written about him. Great song.
I was gonna say, where are you going with that? He's got a hot song.
He's got bang. Well, I mean, he's not ugly, and his significant other also not ugly.
I'd imagine most athletes' significant others are not, or mostly, very, very attractive individuals.
Yeah. What up, Larva? Thanks for popping in here.
To their personalities is what.
Yeah, their personalities and their hobbies outside of the game.
But just with this team, Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Buckets, he's always, provided that leadership. There's a reason why Joel Embiid was upset when he left Philly. I think he got humbled last year in the playoffs when they ran into the Bucks, and Giannis just owned him. He started guarding Jimmy Butler and completely shut him down. That's why Giannis is the second best player in the NBA, in my opinion.
Because of how he performed against Jimmy Butler?
Well, that was one of them. I mean, the Bucks kind of came at everybody in their revenge tour where they were, had shortcomings against teams. I mean, they had like the Jimmy Butler, Bam kind of wall going to shut down Giannis, and that was non-existent. I mean, he just ran through it and kind of ran through this team. So they definitely got to bounce back from that. But Kyle Lowry's a really good defender. He's all-star in Toronto, one of the greatest Raptors, I think, ever in the game, and he still has a lot of game left in him. He could provide a spark and definitely go off on three. He's not the most consistent shooter, but he definitely has those spurts. And I think he'd work well with this cast of characters on the Heat. And that's why, definitely predict them to make the playoffs and maybe get out of the first round. I don't know. I think they'll go like 6 or 7 in the first, but I don't think they're making it past the first
There's a
round.
word that people always use to describe Kyle Lowry, and it's not thick before you say thick.
With 2 C's.
It's the Heat this year are actually using that to describe the way they are. People always say Kyle Lowry's a dog, and that Miami roster is filled with dogs. Like, it's a bunch of dudes that defend at a high level. It's a bunch of dudes that have relentless offensive styles. That it's not necessarily top to bottom the most talented roster. I think it's a talented roster, but it's not the most talented roster. But I think they're going to run a lot of dudes out of the gym with just the Miami Heat style of relentless play, especially now that, as much as I love him, Dragic's not the starting point guard, because he's a crafty guard. He's really good at a lot of stuff. And he tried to be out on the court as often as he could, but he was always dealing with lower body injuries. He had a lot of issues with his feet. He had a lot of issues with his ankles. The wear and tear on him had just built up over so much time. I think Kyle Lowry, even though he is getting a little bit older, is going to be a perfect replacement for him. I don't have them, like winning the East or anything crazy like that, but I can genuinely see the Heat reclaiming a top 4 spot in the East and potentially having a playoff matchup with the Bucks. They have a talented roster. They've got a great coach. They play really well at home.
They're a good regular season team. If you have a well-rounded roster that grinds out games and a good coach, those lead to a lot of like regular season wins where some dudes on like back-to-backs, like I feel like they're just a lot of, and the regular season is a long season. You got to rack up wins, and good coached teams that they have the right mindset with Jimmy Butler leading that locker room. They want to win. Yeah. So, and they'll do whatever it takes to win. So I think where. And
last year they had a less talented lineup, and they were one of the best defensive teams in the league. while being one of the worst offensive teams. This year, basically every move they've made, I think, has made them better offensively, but has not really made them any worse defensively. I could see them being top 8 in both metrics across the entire league, not just in the East. And going, not necessarily like crushing teams and blowing them out every single night, but competing with the real contenders in both division or in both conferences. I disagree with you a little bit on the Heat. I think they're going to be better than Vegas says. I could see him winning 50 games. I think people are really underselling him this year because last year was not what they wanted to see from him, especially the playoff performance. And I think that playoff performance, the guys that ended up winning the title, is coloring a lot of impressions about them.
I mean, yeah, that'd be, I that is a high ceiling, higher ceiling than I would have predicted, but I wouldn't be shocked if that happened.
That's probably going to be my hottest take this episode, that the Heat are going to win 50 games, because there's really not that many hot takes associated with the rest of these teams. But I think, look, a lot of teams have had bad playoff showings. The Bucks a year ago had a bad playoff showing, and the year prior to that had a bad playoff showing, and then they won the finals. And people were like, yeah, they're going to win a lot of regular season games, but they're not going to be real contenders until they can get over the hump. I think this Heat team might be able to get over the hump. They've got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of hard workers. They've got a lot of guys that have gone deep in the playoffs between Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo 2 years ago and Markieff Morris, obviously Tyler Hero. Like, their young guys are talented. Their old guys are talented. They don't have a ton of guys in the middle age-wise. So the old guys could end up getting run down, and the young guys might not be able to carry that load.
But still also having a lot of guys that went to the finals 2 years ago that have had playoff success and know what it takes to get there, that is important to a roster. And that's I know that Zach Lowe, been listening to a lot of the Lowe posts. He's been talking about how the Bucks, although the Nets are still his overwhelming favorite, just having something, winning a championship and knowing what it takes to like come together and win a championship is really important for a team. You just see them attack and go into series with that experience and that confidence that they know what it takes to get it done. They've done it before, and that really is an advantage. And you see that with the teams that have been winning. And like the Warriors, you knew they were going to make it to the finals every season. With the Cavs, Warriors, I mean, LeBron's always made it to the finals too on the East, but there's just something about, they've been there before. They know how to do it. Even though the Raptors, do really well, LeBron James is just going to have how many fadeaways and end up beating that team in the playoffs. You just know how it's going to end. So I think that's where the Heat do have an advantage. They have a lot of guys that have had a history of winning and going deep in the playoffs.
And I will say, I don't know what he's going to look like this year. I think he's on a pretty low salary deal. But if Victor Oladipo is healthy, and I don't know if he's going to be, because it's always a question mark with Vic, and it's why he fumbled the bag and why he didn't get a max contract somewhere.
He lost a lot of money.
If Victor Oladipo, yeah, he did. But at least, I mean, not at least. Unfortunately, he lost it because of injuries, whereas a guy like Dennis Schroeder lost it because he played himself out of it. Oladipo lost it because his body couldn't keep up. But if Oladipo's body stays together and holds together, he doesn't have to go back to his almost all NBA heights. If he plays like a good starter level player as a bench guard, the team is going to crush people, because he would be the best sixth man in the league.
Just going in and scoring, taking on a ISO Joe Lou Williams type role. If he was able to do that,
and being able to slash, not having to rely on his shot to get guys down, but being able to slash and cut teams up, his style would be so great for a bench unit, because he's also a good distributor at this point. He developed those skills over the past few years when he was really becoming an offensive powerhouse, and injuries have really sapped him. But a lot of guys have gotten their legs back under them playing for the Heat. Whatever's going on in Miami, and I think we have some ideas about what's going on in Miami with injury prevention, guys tend to look better playing there.
Those Miami Vice jerseys are just so nice.
Yeah.
I wish I had one to wear tonight. I love wearing this Muggsy Bogues, but those colors. I want that D Wade Miami Vice jersey.
Dude, I want a Tyler Hero one. No, you can't. I mean, they're not even going to be the jerseys this year, I don't think. So now you got to buy like one of the older ones.
Yeah, you could find them out there.
Or yeah, I mean, look, we can get them off like AliExpress or something like that. But
Yeah.
but it's crazy to me that like a universally beloved, right? A universally beloved jersey like the Vice jerseys, they don't want to sell them.
Yeah, I get it.
What are you doing? What are you doing? We're back to the show. All right, we are back. Matt, thank you for coming back and not leaving me. That would have been a real tough look for me if I had to then go and talk about both East and West.
I would never do that, GQ.
I appreciate it. I believe that you would never do that. You're back. Vino's back. He's coming to hang out with me. Things are going well in my life. We just covered the Heat. And so, just so I've got it down so far, you have the Magic as the worst. You have the Wizards in fourth. And then you have the Heat in third. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, excellent. And so far for me, we have gone through the Rockets being the worst team in the division in the Southwest and the Spurs being the fourth worst team. Let's move on to the team that I think is going to be in the middle of the division. And give me just 1 second. Spreadsheet. Off the top of my head, sorry, I've got the Grizz.
Do you play? Yes,
yeah, I know who it is.
I don't. When you do the scene?
I don't know. Yeah, we'll edit that out. I don't know why I was like, who am I doing? But I'm sitting here. I'm petting my dog. I'm having a good time. I've got the Grizz being right in the middle of the division. I think Vegas may have the Pels right in that area. I think Vegas has both the Pels and the Grizz right around like 40 wins.
I could see that.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, looking at it now, Vegas has the Grizz at 41.5. I've actually got them a little bit below that. I've got them at 39. And the reason for that is because they're an incredibly young roster. Yeah. So I think the Grizz are probably maybe 2 years away from being like really ready to compete. They've got a super talented roster. There's a lot of talented players on the roster. They've got fucking Ja Morant, obviously, Jaren Jackson Jr., Dylan Brooks, Chris Dunn was recently acquired. Steven Adams was recently acquired in the trade for.
I see him popping up a lot when I've been watching their preseason highlights too. Like the dude, Steven Adams has always been a guy that's just making a scene and like it's just. I feel like when is this dude gonna slow down? But he's always just doing the dirty work, getting offensive boards, getting those like hook shot buckets, being a menace on defense. And I think he's a great type of player to complement like Ja Morant when he drives into the hoop and like running pick and rolls together. I could see that doing well. Same with Jaren Jackson Jr.
I will say I think he's an inferior player to JV. I think JV is the better player, but I think Steven Adams' role is far more supplementary to a starting guard like Ja Morant. That I think the two of them are going to work really well together. I think he's going to take a lot of pressure off of Ja Morant on the defensive end.
And Valanciunas was always the scorer, but then I feel like he never played the minutes. He never was like too high in minutes. He was a guy that like you wanted to play when you needed a bucket at the end of the game, but still he didn't like. He wasn't one of those guys that are out there playing 38 a night. He never was that type of player.
Yeah. This year they got Chris Dunn and Jarrett Culver. I think Vegas is a little bit higher on them than I am because they think Ja Morant's going to take a superstar leap. And I didn't mention Kyle Anderson.
Well, the play-in, he was freaking amazing in the play-in game last year. I feel like whenever
talented player, a guy that's going to be a superstar in the league for a long time if he stays healthy. But
he is a dude that hopefully he could stay healthy and stay physically as dominant. Because I do feel like he doesn't really have that type of aging game. He kind of reminds me of that Allen Iverson in the same way that I'm so excited watching him and the athletic plays that he makes. But dude is a slasher. He's really quick. He hangs in the air on his finishes, and you can't believe like the things that he did. And I just feel like that doesn't translate as well if his body starts to break down. So hopefully, and I'm a believer in Ja. I think he's gonna be good for a long time, especially with like medicine the way it is in training. If he's just all about getting buckets, he could definitely keep playing. But way later in his career, I could see him having this sort of like Kemba drop off, AI drop off, guys that physically talented but undersized scorers just kind of happens in the NBA.
Yeah, and I mean the thing, like Ja is one of the most polished young scorers in the league right now. Guy's a second-year player. Like,
Yeah, it's insane.
the heights that he's already achieved at his age, he's trying to yam on everybody in the league.
Dude, that Grizzlies Warriors game was so much fun
Dude,
when he was
he's
going back and forth
yeah.
with them.
I mean,
like,
he's fearless, which is the biggest thing you can say about Ja Morant, and it's not the case for a lot of guys his age in the league. Because they're making mistakes, and they're punished accordingly for those mistakes in terms of the amount of playing time they get. But the way this Grizz roster is built, they know from day one Ja Morant's the guy. We're going to build around Ja Morant if he stays healthy. So let him work through these issues, whether it's defensive issues or mental lapses or turnovers or whatever it may be. And by the time the kid's 24, we're going to be contenders, and we're going to be able to build this team in a way where we may be able to achieve greater heights than we could during the grit and grind years. They're not going to play the same style that they played during the grit and grind years. They're a much faster team than they were then. And I think that because of that, they're likely going to be a more successful team, just the way that the NBA has kind of progressed since then. But I'm really excited to see what they do. I just don't think that they are going to be at the top of the conference. I don't think that they're going to be a play-in team at best. I think they might take a little bit of a step back because they have so many first and second year players on their roster that there's gonna be a lot of development time. There's gonna be a lot of spreading minutes around in weird ways. The majority of their roster is first through third year players. Like I think longest tenured player on their roster is probably Steven Adams with Kyle Anderson right there behind him. Neither of these guys are 10-year players. They're both relatively young. Like I think they're both still in their late 20s, if not like 30. So there's still a lot of growth to be done for a lot of guys on this roster. It's largely made up of prospects. Last year, their offensive rating was right in the middle. They were 15th out of 30. Their defensive rating, however, was 6th out of 30. They were fantastic defensively last year, especially for a roster that was pretty young. I think there were certain elements of playing 10 less games last year that probably helped out their defensive rating because it's a lot of young guys who could basically go all out every single night. But I'm excited to see what they do this coming year. I think that they're going to be a problem for a lot of contenders, but they're going to lose games down the stretch when guys are trying to figure out their playoff seeding. And I can also see them having a little bit of a slow start to the season because they're trying to figure out minutes for a lot of guys.
I want to see JJJ stay healthy one season because even their first playoff run, I thought his injury was really important. He was looking so good. When Ja Morant is running that high pick and roll with him, he can bounce out and take that three. And when he gets hot, he's a really good shooter.
Yeah.
So I think he's a really important piece on offense. And I do think, like Ja's play style, I think Steven Adams just being that bruiser and grinder and guy in the paint that's always, helping get second chances. I feel like Ja is scrappy like that too. And that could, their play styles, I feel like could be really complimentary. So I'm a little higher. I really like the Grizzlies, but like I'd probably take them over the Pelicans just because I really like them. Ja's been winning. I think the Pelicans still need to take that leap to start consistently winning games. But they're going to be a really fun team to watch. I always check out Ja Morant highlights the next day too. The Grizzlies.
How could you not? He's a human highlight reel. He's I mean, in a lot of ways, he reminds me of like a longer Dwayne Wade, like the way they cut and the way that they're like constantly just trying to go at guys. The way that Dwayne Wade came into the league. Obviously, I'm pretty sure Ja at this point is still younger than D Wade was when he was a rookie because D Wade stayed in college a little bit longer. But just two fearless guards that would absolutely cut through anybody in front of them. I think Ja's going to be a superstar. I just don't know if the roster is there yet to really support him as much as he needs. But like I said, I think they're 2 years away from being legitimate contenders. I think it'll be a great development year. They're going to be a good team this year, but not a great team. They're going to be a little bit below or hovering around 500. And in the next couple of years, they can start actually looking at like free agents and making some moves with some of the guys they're developing and see what kind of roster they can put together. I'm hopeful for Chris Dunn. I'm hopeful for Jarrett Culver. I don't know a ton about their draft picks this year. They had a couple first round draft picks, but not guys that I'm super educated on. But hopefully they get some burn and either they become stand or parts of the starting roster, or they get traded for guys that are a little bit have a little bit more experience in the league, so they can start building an actual playoff contender.
No, I like it. Yeah, they're going to be fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk this next team over in the East.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
So, this is a team that a lot of people are high on. I'm obviously pretty high on them. Buzz
Yeah,
City.
yeah.
I think the Hornets are going to do really well this season, and so that's why I'm going to go with them finishing second in the division. Probably middle of the pack of the playoffs where I have them. Vegas likes them this year too. They're at 38.5, which I think is pretty good for the Hornets. I'm going 43-39. Last year they were 33-39. Coach James Borrego, they were 109.5, 23rd in scoring, and then 13th to 30th in defense. But the big thing was they had the injury to Gordon Hayward early. Like I was saying before, when he was on their team, they were over 500 by like 2-3 games team, which is why I had them finishing about that way. But I'm really excited to watch LaMelo Ball in his second year. He's a really exciting player. One of those guys like with Zion that I've been watching on YouTube since he was in high school, taking, half court threes. But he is a really exciting player that I think could take a leap in his half court offense. He has really good vision. He's a fun guy because he gets on the break and he runs. Throwing those alley-oops to PJ Washington and Miles Bridges is always fun. I feel like I always see Instagram highlights of the Hornets because they're just one of those teams that they have a great broadcast crew and they're always so hyped when they make highlights. And then
they do. They
Scary
do have a
Terry
really great
Rozier, who's
commentating
been
crew. I
playing
will say that.
really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlotte. Oh, it's great. Like I
Yeah.
love listening to their home highlights. Whenever I have a chance,
I love a
choose,
broadcast
like,
crew that actually likes basketball. And same thing in the other direction. I love a broadcast like for any sport. Baseball, you see a lot of it where it seems like the broadcast crew does not like baseball that much, and it really sucks me out of the game. Basketball, fortunately, it's a much higher paced sport, and it's a lot of younger broadcast crews. So you see guys that actually seem to like the game, which is really great. But the Hornets are on our NBA and on Twitter all the time because of how hyped their guys get. I love it.
And I think just Melo's going to be a really fun guy to watch. And Rozier is so clutch. Like, let me look up the stat. So he was 46 for 97 on clutch threes, which is the best for any player with as many attempts in the 25 years for which we have, I guess, clutch data or whatever. But that happened a lot last year. And I was watching plays. He was closing out games by himself, taking extremely difficult shots. He's that guy that can blow up and have his own night. And, just looking at Mason Plumley was a guy that they added because they got rid of Corey Zeller, and a few other players which provided that like depth on defense and height. But they got Kelly Oubre Jr. I know we all love Oubre.
We love Oubre for some of the right reasons and some of the wrong ones. Yeah, I mean, do we necessarily love him because he's a championship player? No. Is he stupidly hot? Yeah, big time.
But I think the reason why I think he's going to fit so well in this team is you're going to see plays where they get running on the floor. I think when they have Melo, Rozier, and they're playing small and they don't choose to put Plumlee, maybe they put Bridges in that starting lineup. Maybe they throw Oubre in there too. But they're just going to be a lot of fun when they're on the run, playing that fast break type offense. And I just think with like Gordon Hayward, not really on the level of like a Luka, Jokic, LeBron type like game commander of an offense. But when he has the ball, he is a guy that you can run a half court offense around. And he was doing that a lot with Brad Stevens when he was on the Celtics. Fortunately, he also, he's just been dealing with injuries on every team he's been at. But when he's healthy, he's an impact
He's just
player.
super unlucky.
So, and James Bouknight was their 11th pick in the draft, I think, off the bench because he's really a scorer. I think he's going to be, a guy that will get some opportunities to earn some more minutes there. But I'm high on the Hornets. I have them finishing 43-39, like I was saying before. Definitely one of those teams, maybe like 5th, 6th, I'd say, in the Eastern Conference. and they're going to be a team that's going to be on SportsCenter a lot. They're going to have a lot of highlights. They're going to be fun. And I'm just really excited to see how much Melo can grow in his second year, and just how high Terry Rozier's game can continue to improve too, because he's been a guy that's been, really impressive last year. The injuries, because Melo also, I think, broke his wrist for a little bit last year, when they were trying to make a playoff push as well. So they just had a lot of injuries. He was doing it all for a bit. But I think when you have a, cast of characters around you that can compete, this is just going to be a really fun team to watch. Go Buzz City. Michael Jordan, the only owner that has not dipped into the luxury tax, which I just think is pretty funny, out of every single NBA team. So the fact that
Michael Jordan is
team and
he's rich, but he's not like he's just at like the borderline level of NBA rich. Like people are always like, oh, the Buss family only, like their net worth is only $500 million, and it's like the Buss family does not dip into their personal finances as it relates to the Lakers. Do you know how much money the Lakers make? They don't need to dip into their personal money as it relates to the Lakers. So it doesn't matter how much money they have. Michael Jordan, like the Hornets don't make money. So if Michael Jordan does want to dip into the luxury tax, he may need to dip into his actual money. Like it's a different ball game for a team like that is not the most famous team in sports. I like this roster.
Save your money for your golf bets.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if you're not putting $15,000 per hole, what are you doing? I like the roster.
So I wish to be rich enough to survive 9 holes with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
That'd be
man,
something.
I'm rooting for you. I like the talent on the roster. I don't know how much I like the fit. LaMelo Ball, I expect to take a big jump this year. Scary Terry, super up and down player. One that I still believe in, and I'm glad that he got paid, and I think that he can be a genuinely talented player in the league for a lot of years. But he's a guy that will sometimes shoot his team out of games. Same problem kind of that I have with Kelly Oubre is that not as talented as Scary Terry. Let's be clear about that. But Kelly Oubre gets tunnel vision and thinks that he can take over games. He did it when he was on a team with John Wall and Bradley Beal. He did it when he was on a team with Devin Booker. He did it when he was on a team with Steph Curry. And I imagine he'll do it when he's on a team with LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward. Kelly Oubre thinks a little bit too much of his basketball skills. He's not a great passer, not the greatest rebounder. Defensively, he has regressed, in my opinion. I think he's gotten worse. And offensively, he wants to ISO all the time, and he wants to drive to the rim and dunk on guys or take off-balance threes, and he's not the shooter that he should be. But when he's hot, he can fucking, like, on hustle plays and shit, he can tear teams apart. Gordon Hayward, super talented guy. I remember, 5 years ago, everyone was calling him the white LeBron. Obviously, there was a joke to that because
when he was on Utah, he was yamming on Utah. He was
he took some leaps defensively and he became a better shooter, and he became a better distributor, and it was a little bit of a floor general on Utah.
He was really the perfect Utah Jazz superstar.
He was, for a lot of reasons. He was the perfect Utah Jazz superstar, which is also why he probably would have been the perfect Boston Celtics superstar if things had played out well. But let's not get too into that one. But he can't stay healthy, and when he is healthy, he's very good. But it's such a crapshoot because his injuries are so weird. Like they're like random injuries.
Like month per month, sometimes injuries where it's just like it's not a day-to-day, week-to-week. It's like he's out for a sizable portion of the season.
If a player were to ever get injured because like if there was like a car giveaway at halftime on the court, like you shoot a 3-pointer and you win this like Ford Tundra or something like that, and somebody hit the 3-pointer, I could see Gordon Hayward getting injured because the guy that hit the 3-pointer got behind the wheel and tried to drive it off the court and ran it into Gordon Hayward. Like the weirdest things happen to him that get him injured. He's just one of those guys that like just crazy shit happens to, and it's unfortunate because he's very talented. Mason Plumley, a guy that like everyone says, Jordan loves his big white centers. It's true. There's fact. It's like there's proof to support it. I like Mason Plumley. I think he is a really, really good distributor for his position. I think he's a really, really talented passer and defender when he gets the
He's a high
opportunity to be
energy
one.
player too.
Yeah, and he's going to grab a lot of boards, and he's going to put LaMelo and Terry in a position to succeed. Um, Ish Smith, he's been around every single team in the league at this point. He's a super fast guard. Uh, he's going to win you some games. He's going to lose you some games. Miles Bridges, super talented guy. Don't know if he's at the point yet where he's going to be a difference maker. I think he might still be a year or two away from that. But yeah, he's a talented guy and he's a great prospect. I probably have the Hornets right around where you do in terms of wins. Maybe a little bit under you. I think Vegas has him at 38.5 or 39.5. I've probably got him in like the 40 to 42 range. I think you said you've got him at 43 and 39. So we're right there. Like they're going to be probably a game or two up or down from 500. And I can see him competing, like I've said with a lot of these teams. Because they've got a superstar player on their team, they're going to compete with a lot of these guys. LaMelo's going to be a superstar if he continues to develop. But I don't think they're there yet. So, but I want to see where they go because I want to see fucking what heights LaMelo can achieve. And
they're going to be a fun team, and a lot of NBA heads are picking them. And Bill Simmons, Zach Lowe, even on like their respective networks podcasts, like other ESPN and Ringer podcasts that I've listened to, a lot of people are talking about how the Hornets are going to be an exciting team to watch. Which, a few injuries, they could easily be in the dumpster fire and bottom of this division. I could see too. So hopefully they stay healthy. Hopefully LaMelo Ball takes that second leap. Because I think they do have a lot of young, exciting players that are one really impressive season or leap away from being actual contenders. So
prior to the Bulls getting Lonzo, I was actually kind of hoping that he would go to Charlotte because I think he and LaMelo in a really interesting way kind of cover each other's deficiencies. Yeah, and I think they'd be a really fun, like Lonzo can guard big twos and small threes. So if you really want to, you could probably run him at the three. I mean, like there'd be some weird fit issues there, but I'd be really interested to see them playing at the pro level together, especially with Lonzo really figuring his shot out in the past year. Unfortunately, not what happened. We'll talk about the Built Bulls next week. Or did we talk about the Bulls already? We didn't talk about the Bulls already. We'll talk about them next week.
Yeah. Hey, we didn't talk Bulls yet.
We did not. We'll talk about them next week. Yeah. I'm trying to go through my head and be like, what division are they? But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the Hornets roster. I think they're going to be one of the most exciting teams in the league. Even if they don't end up being a playoff contender, I think their style is going to be highlight material pretty much every night. And so you're going to see a lot of them on Twitter. You're going to see a lot of them on RNBA. You'll see a lot of them on House of Highlights. They're going to gain a lot of fans, which is going to be big for a Hornets team that has largely been boring for a lot of years. I mean, like Kemba was good, but he was always hurt and always losing. Yeah.
Jamal Mashburn.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the most storied franchise, but
not quite.
Let's talk Zion.
Let's talk Zion. Yeah, you knew who was going to be second in this division. I think I had said that the Pels were going to be, but I think it's also pretty self-explanatory between the Mavs and the Pels, which ones I think.
Which kind of cool. Hate to cut you up, but Zion, Ja, like imagine a universe where they stay for their respective teams and are competitive there. Like, I think that could be like a low-key kind of division rivalry where like you have two guys that came out in the same draft. I mean, I remember like when Zion came back from his injury and started playing really well, it's like, did Ja do enough to win Rookie of the Year? Could Zion still win it just by playing the last few games and looking dominant? And, Ja's always kind of lived in that shadow of Zion just because
which is crazy.
Like, yeah.
Because
Ja's been the one who's had probably the more impressive NBA career so far.
I would say he has. And I think there's also a chance because of the way they're built and just what you've heard from Ja's camp so far versus Zion's camp and also the teams they play for. I think there's a chance that Ja definitely like not even a chance. I think there's a likelihood that Ja has the better NBA career. Zion is a freak of nature and he does so many things at such a good level. Like he is one of the best inside scorers I've ever seen. He's got the softest touch for a dude that's the athlete level that he's at.
Yeah.
But what's the health going to look like? What's the team construction going to look like? Is he going to force his way out after 4 years, 5 years? Is he going to get better at defense, or is he going to keep trying to make up for it with his athleticism and never learn like the team structure of an NBA defense? Like, there's a lot of elements to it. All that being said, Vegas has the Pels at 39.5 wins. I've got them at 41. I think they're going to be right there in the range that Vegas has them at. I think they've got a good idea of what they're going to be this year. They're not going to be contenders. They've got talent on the roster, but they've also got a lot of guys that are probably going to be out of the league in a few years. Brandon Ingram,
said he
obviously,
wants to take a leap. He said he wants to be in the playoffs. He's talked about.
He said that, and we talked about it last week. I said Devin Booker said that, and then what happened with him?
Yeah, and I mean, he's a guy too that if if he wants the ball, wants to be used more and develop his guard skills. I mean, you could tell that his confidence in where his passes are going is there. He's just not making the right ones, or maybe making too aggressive passes. Just like with time that will come, but he's got the vision. For as big as he is, he's so freaking quick. And, when you get to the point, why can't he transition to more of like a Luka LeBron type player? I think it's just he's younger right now and just such a beast in the post. I mean, 80% of his buckets are around the post, and he's converting that at like a 70% rate. He's just so good there. But even when he was a rookie at first and he came in, and I think like his first game, he hit like 3 threes in a row or something like that. And I remember like closing it out and was just bringing the ball down every possession. Like, I think he could be that.
He wants to be the man. And I think he's
Yeah.
going to be the man. Is he going to stay healthy? And is he going to be the man on the Pelicans? Or is he going to be in a, CP3 or Anthony Davis position where he's the man elsewhere?
I just love, like, I mean, we've been watching Zion highlights for 5 years now in high school, and I just the comments are, it's like, imagine failing.
I didn't think he was going to be this good. I'll fully admit, when I saw his high school highlights of him beating up on like essentially little kids, I was like, yeah, I mean, once he faces a jump in competition, he's not going to be that good. Then he went to Duke and he got really good really quick, and then he came to the NBA and he was really good really quick. Like,
and he's always been the biggest guy. Like, you always feel like he's a man among boys, but that was the same way in college. And in a lot of NBA games, he's still that way too. He's still, I think, the second biggest player, or maybe the biggest player in the NBA right now.
In terms of weight, in terms of height. I mean, like, he's very much in like a Charles Barkley tier. But Barkley was a lot leaner for the first, 8 to 10 years of his career than he was towards the end. Like, everybody remembers Fat Barkley.
Barkley had a hell of a wingspan too.
Yeah.
I think he was one of those guys that was undersized, but like his arms were like 7-foot wingspan maybe, and he was like that 6'8" type player.
And he built a style that worked for his body type, whereas Zion is so heavy and he has this high flying style that you gotta wonder, is his lower body going to be able to deal with it? Is his back going to be able to deal with it? Is he going to have injuries every year that take him out for 15 to 20 games, or potentially are season-ending injuries? I mean,
he could have that.
Everyone's thinking this isn't an unreason. If he loses some weight, I think he's in a much better position. But the dude's like 280 pounds at 6'7", 6'8".
Him and Harden, with the exception of Kelvin Benjamin, are guys that I see their comments on the weight the most.
I hate hearing it about James Harden though, because James Harden is thick. James Harden is built like a brick shithouse. And James Harden, up until this past year, never missed games.
And then Kyle Lowry are built the same way, I feel like.
Yeah, like, and they're intentionally built to be thick as fuck so that they can back guys down in the post and so that they can put guys on their hip and out-muscle them, because they're not the biggest jump out of the gym kind of athletes that you'll have. They don't have the greatest first step in the world, but they're like, I hate to say sneaky strong. They are sneaky strong. They're crazy strong guys. Like, they out-muscle forwards and centers.
There's a lot of plays where it's like, how did Harden kind of like go in there and look like he got a layup so easily? And it's like, well, the guy couldn't get around him to block the shot. It's not that, he got a wide open lane. He just does.
People think that so much of what Harden does is like ref based. It's not. Like, the refs definitely help him out.
I saw that clip that you posted. They're definitely going to stop doing it. I mean, I hope that ref consistency stays, because I've seen Russ jumped into a player Steph tried to do
Steph
it.
did. All the
Harden
superstars
did
have
it.
tried it.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
they've. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I'm curious to see where it goes, but
Where do you have the
I
Pelicans win wise this year?
I've got the Pelicans at 41. So I've got them. I've got them going 500. Like I said, Vegas
Yeah.
has them at 39 and a half. They're going to be a good team. They're not going to be a great team. I think their pace is probably going to be one of the highest in the league. I think last year they were top 10 in pace. I think this year they might be top 5 in pace because they're going to try and get out and run a lot. But I don't know if that's actually going to be the best thing for them. They've got a new head coach. They don't have Stan Van Gundy anymore. He lost the locker room. He didn't have the respect of his players. They didn't want to run his system. And I think the NBA's left him behind a little bit. But, there's often growing pains with a new coach, especially as we've seen with David Griffin as the front office guy. Seems like he may cause conflict with players. Seems like he may be pushing certain guys out. I think there's going to be a lot of narratives about this team this year because people are already trying to push Zion to go elsewhere. I don't know how much we need to pay heed to those narratives. NBA is a very narrative-driven sport, but they're going to be good. They're just not. I don't see them being a playoff team. They might be like the last of the play-in teams, but I don't even necessarily see them winning a play-in game because they're likely going to face a team that's more well-constructed than them. And much like the Grizz, they're a super young roster. It's primarily first and second year players with a couple guys that have been in the league for a while, but it's almost entirely rookies and sophomores, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains, even if the talent is there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Valanciunas will be. He's gonna add some points. I've always liked Satoransky. I thought he's a guy that can,
good backup guard.
Great, role player backup.
Ingram's good. Ingram's great. Josh Hart is a good, backup guard.
And Devontae Graham, dude is a bucket. He's undersized, but he can score. He was on Charlotte last year, and there were times where he was another guy that I thought should have gotten more minutes maybe than Kemba Walker a lot last season, but.
Yeah.
He's another spark that they could have that helps stretch the floor to maybe someone that Zion can run a pick and roll with or something, or, I think they're going to be fun, but yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say
500 makes sense.
Random guy on the roster that I think is going to be a little bit of a difference maker, not necessarily in terms of on-court production. I think Garrett Temple is going to be really, really good for this roster. Garrett Temple is one of the most widely respected guys in the NBA, a guy who has never been anything more than an average role player, really. And he's beloved by coaches. He's beloved by executives. He's beloved by players. Everywhere he goes, people sing his praises. He's a great locker room guy. He's a great leader. He's been through the shit. I think he's going to be really good for the development of these young guys. And it's likely going to pay dividends in future years. I don't know if it's necessarily going to get them over any sort of hump this year. But he's one of those guys that if you've got him on a roster, you'd like to see him there because he's going to be a good locker room voice for young players. So I'm excited to see what they do. The Pelicans, unfortunately, never one of those. They're a franchise that never gets over the hump. I'm not necessarily rooting for them to get over the hump because they're not my team. But I would like to see them, have some sustained success, and I'd like them to see them do it with a homegrown superstar. So I do hope Zion stays on the team and they're able to get it done with at least some of these guys. But it's not going to be this year.
I could see him wearing 32 for purple and gold, though.
I don't want Zion on the Lakers. I'm not going to pass him up. Let's be clear. It's just like when I used to say I don't want Kevin Durant on the Wizards. I'm not going to say no to him if he wants to come. But no, I believe in the idea of if your team builds a good team around you, you should try and make things happen. If you're just an awful team like the first stint that LeBron had with the Cavs, I totally understand you leaving, and you're justified in leaving. But if they're building a good team around you and they're making the moves that you're asking them to make, you owe it to them to try and make it work. It's hundreds of millions of dollars to billions of dollars that are at play in a lot of people's careers. Try and make it work.
So we were talking Cardinals, how much we don't like Cardinals,
Yeah.
but I am a Hawks fan. I
Are
got
you a
the
Hawks
Hawks
fan?
going.
So you're wearing a
Got the
Charlotte
Hawks.
jersey. You're a Nets guy, and you're a Hawks fan. What team don't you
So
like?
I
The
really
Sixers.
like I mean, the Hawks have similar to the Pacers. I feel like they've been those well-rounded teams that are very good offensively. They were the Spurs East a few years ago.
Yeah.
Just have always been a super well-rounded, well-coached, well-run organization. In the past few years, and then when they drafted Trae Young, they wanted to make a step to be a contending team. And last year, I thought that was a huge step in that. Um, Trae Young balled out. I mean, I thought the Knicks were going to be an exciting team that were going to give them struggles in the playoffs, and they ran by them.
Yeah.
They played the Bucks really well. I mean, they didn't end up winning, but I thought they had a really good series against them. Once Nate McMillan took over that roster and that team last year, the team responded. They went 27-11, which I think was an NBA best since McMillan took over. Um, they finished fifth in the Eastern Conference last year, but that's because they started out 14-20 with Lloyd Pierce. They good offensively, top of the league. I mean, they were top of the league in both offense and defense. They had an 8th offensive rating overall, though. Vegas has them at 47.5 wins. They have them doing really well too. I have them going 48-34, right around 50 wins. Could be like a 52-53 win type team, just
Sure.
because I think they have a really, really talented and stacked roster. They got Trae Young, Ice Trae. He's a beast that's continuing to improve. Really good playmaker. He sees the court well. He can, when he makes those full court passes and runs those pick and rolls with Clint Capella, they're really fun to watch. Bogdanovic is just a sniper. When he's hot, he can take over. He was really exciting to watch on the Kings. He would blow up nights and get like 48 points for the Kings out of nowhere. And so when he came to Atlanta, I knew he was going to be a problem. Red Velvet, Kevin Herter, shout out to UMD.
Good old Red Velvet, yeah. Go Terps.
I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah. Hey, look, we all have our
He's a
biases.
bucket that is continuing to just improve his bag and his offensive game. And then John Collins was a guy that they were able to re-sign that was an important piece to them and had taken a step with them as a really good defender and a really good, scorer and potential all-star for that team. And then you got Deandre Hunter on the wing, probably their best wing defender, who's continued to, I think, will take another step in his offensive game.
I'm gonna
Cam
say,
Reddish,
just to interrupt you really briefly, I think DeAndre Hunter might be one of their most like their best players this year.
yeah,
I don't know how much you watched him when he was at UVA. He was a guy that I really, really wanted the Wizards to get. Didn't fall to us, obviously, but he's basically good at everything, and he's a winner. Like, I know it's super cliche to say that a pro athlete is a winner, because all of these guys are winners basically at every level, and how do you even quantify that? He does every little thing that you need to do to win games. He gets better at every aspect of the game consistently. And I think he's going to, like, he's already a 15 point per game scorer. I think he's going to take a significant jump this year. Even if his numbers don't go up a crazy amount, I think he's going to be hyper efficient, and he's going to get the ball a lot in a lot of really good situations.
I feel like he's a great plus minus player. Like you're saying, he's winning. It's because when he's on the court, the team does better. And I think that's when I was reading a lot of the previews, a lot of people are high on DeAndre Hunter. And
I'm a big
similarly,
fan.
do you think that they could step up and be one of the best players on that team? Cam Reddish came back from the playoffs last year and looked really good. So I'm excited to see him with the full off season after recovering from an injury. He was one of the top Duke guys that were picked with Zion and RJ Barrett. And he had, not the ceiling of those two guys, but a very high ceiling in his own right.
What a year for that team.
Yeah. Oh my God. Ridiculous.
And then also, they're just crazy.
They turned into the Kentucky one and done type team. Like that was the year that Duke was like,
which always cracks me up, because people were always like, Duke would never be a one and done school like Kansas or Kentucky. And then like the second hot prospects wanted to, basically around the time that LeBron started talking about how much he loved Duke, they became a one and done school. And now yeah, they can't say that anymore because they are very much a one and done school now. No
And
longer just like random white snipers going there.
JJ Redick, shout out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and then they also have Danilo Gallinari, who's always a guy. I feel like he's a streaky guy, but a consistently good offensive player. And then Lou Williams, who, like had his own games where he took over when he was coming off the 6-man. He has been one of the guys that Trae Young credits to as being like one of his favorite veteran players that he worked with. I saw a post about, rest in peace, Vince Carter. Funny when he was there for the Hawks, being that type of influence on the team. But I mean, you saw it last year. That series with New York was so much fun to watch. I mean, they gave Milwaukee a really good series. I think Trae Young can continue to take leaps in his game. And they just have a really fun, exciting roster that are going to be good. They're not as good as the Nets and Bucks. They're not in that tier, but they're right below there. And I think they're alone at the third best team in the East. And they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm excited.
They're also significantly younger than the Nets and the Bucks, so they're very much one of those like next up kind of teams. Kind of,
and just hoping they can keep it all together too.
I think they're a little bit in a similar position to like the Suns versus like what the Suns are right now to like the Lakers and the Clippers. The Suns obviously went to the finals last year, but so much of that was due to injuries and stuff like that. Really, where the Suns shine is with the prospects on their roster and how good their young guys are. And I think the Hawks are in a similar boat. So there's going to be a lot of good upcoming superstar matchups between those two teams in the next few years. I'm pretty high on the Hawks as well. I think I've probably got them around 49, 50 wins. I haven't really thought too much about exactly where they'd land. Vegas having them at 47.5 seems pretty exact to what they want to do to make money off of this.
But I saw just another cool Trae Young stat.
I don't think they're gonna be a finals contender. I do think that they're a tier below like the Nets. And like I said, I think the Heat are gonna win the division. I think the Heat are gonna win 50 games. But I think the Hawks are gonna be right there with them because there's so much talent on the roster.
No, but like Trae Young, he had 160 assists on dunks, and he's led the league in the past 3 seasons. So, all the plays where he just driving in, slashing, has that amazing unstoppable floater. And him and Harden, I feel like, have very similar highlights where is it a floater where it's just going to splash, or is a, center going to go in there like Nick Claxton and Capella and just clean it up? And it's so much fun to watch. And he does that a lot. And he's such a dangerous scorer when he can step back from 3 and space the floor out, but he's so quick that he could get around that defender, get in the paint, and he's very good at what to do once he gets there. The other guy that he was traded with is the team we're going to talk about next, which I think that's one of those like trades you could look back in NBA history where it's like, who actually was the winner? I know that the Hawks got clowned a lot when this first happened, especially with how good Luka looked, but I think it was a really, like, looking back on it, it was a win-win. They're both great superstars to their respective franchises.
Yeah, I think the only team that comes away looking bad is the Kings, as they always do. The Hawks look good, the Mavs look good. Assuming both superstars stay healthy for a decent amount of time, it's a lot like Hakeem versus like Jordan. Like
Hakeem had to be the number one pick.
Sure, Jordan became Jordan, but Hakeem still makes sense. Like it's still like if that's
and he still won a title and he was still like the greatest center. Like, and the Rockets were so good for all those years.
Like if that's the bar, there's not a wrong choice. Marvin Bagley, the wrong choice. Sorry, Kings.
Sorry, Marvin.
But y'all are dumb. You make dumb choices with your dumb coaches and your dumb front office. Neither here nor there. We're not talking about the Kings this week. We shut on them enough last week. We're talking about the Mavs now. I've got them first in the division. Yeah. I've got them winning 52, 53 games. I mean, there's a lot of things we can say about this roster. I think they're super white, very white roster. But they're super talented top to bottom.
Luka Doncic is their superstar.
Yeah, Luka's obviously hyper talented and is going to be one of the faces of the sport for a number of years. Maxi Kleber's super good. Frank super good. Dorian Finney-Smith I think is going to be an impact player. Porzingis, if he's healthy, is going to be if he's healthy and him and Luka get their shit together with whatever their on court and off court issues are with each other, it's going to be a match made in heaven. And by all accounts, they are working on that, and they do have a better relationship now. And Porzingis does look healthy; he's looked really good in preseason. Tim Hardaway Jr., a guy that a lot of people are not super high on because pretty much all he does is score. I, on the other hand, am pretty high on him because I think even if the league, I think people overinflate the value of scorers, but I think Tim Hardaway does it at a good enough level, and he does it from enough spots on the floor that he's still super important.
I like
Boban,
Trey Burke.
everyone loves him. Trey Burke.
Too.
Yeah, Trey
He's a guy
Burke.
He hurts
was
on
awful.
defense, but
he was really
good
bad,
offense,
and then he was out of the league for a little bit, and then he came back, and he was a fucking flamethrower. Like he needed that time out of the league, and sometimes guys need shit like that. Good roster. Obviously, there was the coach turnover. Rick Carlisle is not there anymore. Now it's Jason Kidd.
Shout out New Jersey Net, greatest.
Yeah, I don't know if Jason Kidd's the guy you want to be shouting out.
Did you read that thing about his? Apparently, he was like the biggest asshole coach of all time.
Yeah,
and that's like with the Bucks. Like him
and Mark Jackson. Like if there's smoke, there's fire about both those guys. Like they're just they don't seem like great dudes.
Some of the stories are just so funny to me, where it's like Jason Kidd was so good at doing some of the drills that he would run through the drills perfectly, and then when the players would fuck it up, would just berate the shit out of them. And I just thought that was kind of funny, because it's like, well, I mean, he could do it perfect, so if he's yelling at you, I mean, so it's like, all right,
maybe there's some sense to it, but at the same time, like, we're not all one of the greatest guards of all time. So there's good and bad there.
Where Ty Lue was the coach, where I was just listening to Chauncey Billups talk about him. He can land a punch, but it's not going to bruise. Jason Kidd, I feel like, kind of topical, leaves those domestic violence type bruises.
Jason Kidd. Shouts to earlier in Jason Kidd's career when everyone used to call him Asen Kidd because he didn't have a J. One of my favorite NBA jokes was, that was when we were like kids, was when people used to call him Asen Kidd. I don't think he's a good coach, but I also don't think for this roster and with Luka at the helm of it, I don't think he necessarily needs to be.
Luka runs the offense.
Yeah, which is very fortunate for him. I think Luka is far more polished at this point than Giannis was when Jason was coaching Giannis. And so, whereas like Giannis's growth exposed how bad of a coach Jason Kidd was, I think Luka is going to hide a lot of his deficiencies because he's going to just play quarterback essentially. Yeah. They're going to be a good team. I don't see them. I don't know. Like, there's a part of me that has them as a championship dark horse. But I don't know if they've really got like the rim protection for it. I don't know if they've got the coach for it. All the weird stuff that happened over the offseason between like in their front office and in their coaching staff, I think that's a lot of like turbulence to go into this season with, and I think it might take them a year or two to really settle things down. But I do see them going pretty deep in the playoffs. They're going to be a good team. Unless
as long as Luka
major
Doncic
contributors get hurt. Yeah. If
as
guys
long
are healthy,
as he's healthy, they're fine.
Exactly.
I mean, I think he could win with, KCP has been absent for a lot of those playoff series and games where he's doing it. I mean, with the exception of maybe just LeBron that I could think of as far as like floor generals and guys that can just straight up run the offense, have the ball in their hand every single play, and do everything in their offense. I mean, I don't think anyone does it better. Dude's been
regular season, like we said last week, Harden, but during the playoffs, no, it's Luka.
And I was gonna say Harden, but when you look at like in the playoffs, I feel like he does. And Harden was hurt a lot last playoffs too, but the Nets.
I don't hold last playoffs against Harden, but his Rockets years, there's definitely like issues there.
I think the difference though is the Nets are so talented, and I actually liked it when they were playing a more Warrior style basketball, which I think is that Steve Nash influence where they're sharing the ball. They're like the Globetrotters. You have so many guys, and when you work together and get Joe Harris a wide open three, that might be the best play. And like them sharing the ball, I thought worked really well in their offense. Whereas like Luka, can actually take the ball, slow it down, and still win games and just be like himself and just dominate. And it's so much fun to watch. Like he's just a really special player, and we'll probably be setting, I think there's like every record where it's like X many games with a 40-point triple-double. You know, he's just going to keep breaking every.
Yeah, and some of that is the pace of the game and the way usage rates have gotten inflated. But
with everything else, but
yeah, I mean, he's exceptional. There aren't enough positive adjectives we can use for Luka. As long as he keeps his conditioning right and as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be one of the greats. He came into the league as one of the best rookies ever. Yeah. And then he went on to have one of the best sophomore years ever. And I imagine, is going to do that again with his third year in the league. Like, he's very much on a LeBron track. This Mavs team is going to be very good. Like I said, dark horse to compete for a title. I think that there's a little bit too many good teams in the West where it's really going to happen for them, just the way they're currently constructed. But like, if health does not help out other teams and it does help them out, they're right there. They're right there on talent.
With Kawhi being out and the Clippers maybe not going to be jumping off to the hottest start, like, I mean, there are guys hurt in the West that can make it, and Jamal Murray for the Nuggets. I mean, there are teams and critical injuries to the top teams right now, where if the Mavs get off to the hot start and rack up some wins, I mean, things could break for them well in the playoffs. But I do really like that team. No surprises. I could see them exactly being like a dark horse for a championship. But I think the Mavs, shout out to the 2011 finals run, maybe the greatest finals run of all time.
One of the greatest. People say carry jobs, just one of the greatest finals.
Jason
runs
Kidd
ever.
Was a player for that team.
There was a lot of really great guys on that team. There was a lot of people played their role pretty perfectly on that team.
Jason Terry, Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Kidd, which like they had a lot of guys that were right on there.
Yeah,
like,
Dirk Nowitzki played his role pretty well.
Like,
like
but like they were definitely on their last contract, or they were making decent NBA money before they were like about to rack it up, and still were really good and were able to contribute. Freaking JJ Barea, I think, or maybe not. I'm trying to.
Barea defended LeBron. Yeah,
that's what it was. Yeah. Which, oh my God, LeBron! I mean, he had one of the worst finals performances.
But hey, one of probably the most impactful series in his career as a player.
Because then after that,
definitely a big part of, I think, him making the next 7 finals, and 8 of the next 9. So obviously it's a big black mark on him. At the same time, if it's what got you to be the player you are today, kind of is what it is.
Yeah. And I mean, Jordan didn't make the playoffs or didn't do anything in the playoffs until he got Pippen. So, but we'll have a GOAT discussion, I'm sure, another time.
We sure will. Once we're into the season, we'll definitely have some hot takes about the GOAT. Spoiler alert: Kareem is higher up on my list than a lot of people's. But that's gonna wrap it up for us today, I think. Just to give the recap of my order, I've got the Rockets in last. I've got the Spurs in 4th, then the Pels, then the Grizz, and then I've got the Mavs on top of the division. And Matt, give me yours again. Your
So I had Magic, and then I went with the Wizards, followed by the Heat, Hornets, and then going with the Hawks.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward. The season starts in about a week. Today's the 13th. So if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll probably have it up on the 14th. And I think the first day of NBA basketball this year is the 19th. I want to say the 19th to the 20th. So we will be back next week, right at the start of the season. We're going to be previewing the Central and Atlantic divisions right as we get going for the year. And then we're going to be moving into hopefully, weekly discussions on what teams are looking good, what players are looking good, how our power rankings are doing, if people from these divisional previews are matching up to our expectations, or if they're wizarding it and being absolutely awful. Obviously there's a certain way that I think it's going to go, but who's to say? If you've been watching on Twitch, we appreciate you for being here. If you are not currently a Twitch follower, make sure you hit the Twitch or the follow button. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you like, comment, Share it with your
Like and
friends,
subscribe.
and follow us on social media. It'll be on the screen at Give Go Show on both Twitter and Instagram. And as always, we appreciate you being here, and we will see you next time.
Yes, sir. CGQ.
Peace,
Peace.
dude.